Welcome to episode 1 of File Underwater, the Duckfeed show examining America's finest rock band, R.E.M. This show is made possible by our patrons at patreon.com/Duckfeed.tv. Thank you very much. If you would like to support the network and support this show, content like this, you can head over there, see what we have on offer. Even as little as $1 a month makes a big difference. We thank you very much. My name is Gary Butterfield.
My name is Kole Ross.
And you're listening to the first episode of File Underwater, an R.E.M. podcast.
Yes.
The show where Cole and I convince you that R.E.M. is the greatest American rock band.
Well, I don't know if I took that position.
I feel like there's a good argument to be made.
Oh, there is. Yeah.
Yeah.
For sure.
Keep in mind, lots of greatest, American.
Mm-hmm.
So qualifier.
Yeah.
Rock band qualifier. Not like, it's not Paul Simon. I'm not saying greatest American songwriter.
Right.
Greatest American rock band.
Yeah. I don't know that I necessarily disagree with you. I just feel bad making our opening salvo something that...
I did that on purpose.
Okay. Cool.
I was just doing it to make you feel uncomfortable. But this is our chronological exploration of R.E.M.
Yeah. So this is going to be kind of a limited series. Like there's a definite end to this, but it is something we've wanted to do for a while. So if you're listening to the show and you're not familiar with the other things that we do, Gary and I, we do a podcast network called Duckfeed.tv where we normally talk about video games, but sometimes we get wildly afield and talk about different stuff, different media. And we're only able to do this show because of the support that we get on the Patreon and just kind of the general support for moving to talk about different stuff. So R.E.M., that's something that we have in common, right, Gary?
Yeah, absolutely. Big, both of us are big fans. There's also kind of a niche for this. I know that and this is a very, very different show, but on the Earwolf show, they have their U2 show, the You Talking U2 to Me, which I'm a big fan of, is way, way goofier than I was thinking about this. But that's the other band that I'm like, there should be an R.E.M. version of this. Mm-hmm. It's like the American U2, which is like a way damning thing to say. Like I think R.E.M. is a lot better than U2. Yeah. But so there's a niche for it. And when Cole says limited series, we have, there's 21 years of R.E.M. To talk about, and a lot of studio albums, a lot of things. So it's still going to be kind of a decently length series, but it does have an end date and site, which I think is kind of cool. We'll have this thing that you could, put on a shelf, like this kind of record of the band, kind of exploration. Yeah.
So, I mean, does it make sense to talk about our histories with the band? Like, why us? Right.
Yeah. I was kicked out because I wanted to start farming. I no longer wanted to be in the band. I just thought it'd be good to be a farmer. Okay. And I took a different name and started podcasting right around the time in 2001.
Yeah. Really traded down, didn't you?
Yep. I shaved the spot between my eyebrows and then changed my name. Yeah. To So R.E.M. You go first, then we'll talk about our R.E.M. histories.
Oh, for sure. So I'm young. I was born in 1987, kind of at the tail end of the IRS kind of era. So it doesn't make a lot of sense that I don't know. Like they were huge. They've been huge for pretty much my entire life. But I from a very young age latched on to R.E.M. as just kind of sounding right in terms of like the music that I wanted to listen to. Like, I don't know, this is going to be very embarrassing for anybody who comes at this legit, but I think the first time I was exposed to them was like hearing It's the End of the World as We Know It on the Tommy Boy soundtrack or something. but like I got that CD and I listened to that particular track over and over again because I liked that song so much. And just kind of getting exposed to the mid 90s and, you know, everything that kind of like called back from that on, you know, MTV and VH1, it just kind of felt right. So I was the weird 8th grader who was walking around listening to R.E.M. as opposed to kind of just the trash fire that was like music from 1999 to 2001. Yeah. So I was, it just kind of fit. And that those are kind of my bona fides.
Yeah. It is. I didn't get into it. I mean, that could totally be worse. Like you could have gotten into it through like the Friends soundtrack or like the Batman and Robin soundtrack or something. But so I got into it. The very. I'm trying to think back to the first song that I heard. It was probably "Losing My Religion," if I had to guess, or maybe "Stand." So it was like a single from Green or Out of Time. And real similar, where I was just like, "Oh, this is what music should sound like." I got unreasonably obsessed with the band, and kind of have been during that entire time. Like I would go and this was a Christmas. I would get a tape. Get an R.E.M. tape. Like that was all I asked for. I pored over the liner notes and the art. I would go to the bookstores in my hometown, and this was this was like 13-year-old me, 12-year-old me.
Yeah, so we both hit it about the same time.
Yeah. Just different eras of
just shifted by about 7 years. Yeah.
So I'd go to the bookstore and I would look up in like the rock criticism section. And just kind of, flip through interviews, things like, buy magazines because they had them on the cover. I remember my mom, I was sick once, and she wanted to buy me a magazine, and she didn't really look in the inside of it. And she bought me a magazine that had R.E.M. on the cover, but it was a guitar player magazine.
Oh, yeah?
If you remember those, they just had Tab.
Yeah.
And then that's how you got Guitar Tab before the internet. And it just had 3 R.E.M. songs in it. And I was still like way into it. And I had no idea how to play guitar. I still don't know how to play guitar. But I was just like reading the lyrics and kind of like imagining what the music sounded like compared to the position of, spatially the notes. Things like that. Like it was just, insane.
Yeah.
Insane. It was it's not my, but in my first kind of 3 favorite bands, R.E.M. was the biggest and earliest, and predated, Nirvana and They Might Be Giants, which are the other 2 kind of the holy trinity of bands when I was, an early tween.
Yeah.
But R.E.M. was the first, and I went ridiculously deep.
Yeah.
So
Reveal was the first album, or one of the first albums I bought kind of under my own steam, and that is less embarrassing than the other one that I bought under my own steam, which was Californication by the Red Hot Chili Peppers.
Which one of those will stand up?
Two paths separated in the wood.
Yeah. There's somebody out there who's making the argument that Californication's a better album just because Reveal is like, not top tier R.E.M.
Right.
Like Reveal is semi unfairly maligned.
I think so too.
But it's not. It's also has some problems.
Yeah.
And the first R.E.M. thing I bought, and this was the first album I bought with my own money, was Automatic for the People, which after this point, because I didn't, back in the Out of Time kind of days, I did not earn money. But the first time I bought an album with my own money, and the tape was on it was green plastic. Like translucent, like beautiful translucent green plastic.
Nice.
And I have a very distinct memory of wearing that out. I talked about on Abject Suffering listening to Green on repeat while playing Arrow the Acrobat.
Yeah.
And how those 2 things are intertwined.
Are linked in your head. Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know. Like just R.E.M. was the band that got me like listening to music, like laying on my stomach in bed, reading the liner notes. Or reading the lyrics, which Reveal was, I think, the first one that they put the lyrics on inside of it. So that was a good little fit. But it just established a lot of patterns for me.
I have a specific memory of before bed for about a year, reciting the lyrics in my head to all of the R.E.M. songs that I had in order.
Oh yeah.
So like to go to sleep, I would run through the lyrics of side A Chronic Town through, it was probably Life Search Pageant. That, is probably about where I got to
Yeah.
at that point. But just kind of going through them, it had it all memorized at the time. And it just, it's still like I can still sing along to just about, all these songs. Like I know these songs instinctually.
Yeah.
Like just having heard them
Mm-hmm.
so many trillions of times.
Yeah. And if you don't know the words, it's not that big of a problem.
Yeah. And for the singer or for you, which is great.
Yeah.
The something else I want to talk about too, real quick, is one of the things that really appealed to me about these guys early on, and it makes this feel fun and good to do the show, is that R.E.M. have such a great regular dudeness.
Yep.
To them. Like Michael Stipe has this kind of weird art fuck background.
Mm-hmm.
Peter Buck sometimes pretends to be a rock star, and it's kind of annoying.
Yeah.
Other than that, like, it's just, what if there were four nice dudes?
Yep.
Who like didn't get crazy, like full of themselves, did not go out of their mind with fame, and they're oftentimes like held up as like the example of the good, the people who didn't lose their mind getting famous. And I react to that so strongly as an admirable quality.
Yeah. Like the biggest change that they underwent was they just got really politically active. Which,
yes.
Okay, fine, good. I agree with what they decided to do. So
yeah.
that's fine and good. Yeah.
They just don't have that kind of, because there's people, I think, there are the people who are just like, they've got a little, even if they don't, they look down on the actual Jared Leto Joker. They have just a little bit of that in it, where it's like, I just want, I kind of want a rock star who's kind of dangerous and sexy. Like, nope. Like, give me Mike Mills dressed for Sunday school.
Yep.
Who just wants to make good music, and like, because you get like better work out of that. You get less of these kind of like the desperate hell kind of existential, misfires.
Yeah.
And stuff that you can get from this stuff. So just kind of having like four nice regular dudes. It's just like, that's the kind of thing I want to spend time with. Maybe it speaks to being older and blander.
I mean, but I like that appealed to me way back when too, and they're like, we make jokes on other shows about me being unstuck in time. When I was 13 or 14, like I gravitated toward this just because they were kind of regular and dorky,
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. I'm way into just kind of the blandness, the part of it. There are people who listen to this and listen to the music and listen to the show that will be a huge turnoff for them. And we'll just think like, these guys are really safe and stuff like that. Like, one, in the context of history, not really, particularly, like some of it sounds kind of quaint now, but it was really neat when it came out. But two, there's an appeal to that, like without going full adult contempo. And when we get to the later albums, or even in some of the mid albums where they get to that point, that is kind of where they stumble. Like, that's where they lose me a little bit, is when they kind of go full adult contemporary. But kind of like, making vibrant music while living an adult contemporary lifestyle is very appealing to 36-year-old me, and was appealing to 13-year-old me as well.
Yeah. And something that has kind of stuck out as I've, kind of taken a dive headfirst into the history of the band, and has kind of compounded my admiration for them, is that they work, or, especially at their height, they worked really, really hard. Yeah. Like the amount of touring that they did, the amount of just kind of like getting down and being kind of humble, having these humility tours throughout kind of markets that would otherwise not have supported them if they didn't just go there and like put in the hours. Like, that is tremendously attractive to me in any kind of creative endeavor, but especially in when you look at acts of the time and just all these other things that might have flamed out because of either lack of commitment or flakiness. Like, these guys, they put in the hours in a way that just makes it all seem incredibly admirable to me.
It's set up a foundation where they're kind of like built to last, because the first major album, which we're not going to talk about today, it's gonna be episode 3 of the show, is Murmur, and that was 3 years into the band.
Yeah.
That's kind of a long time, like, for a band that ultimately makes it. It's not, it's not a long time for a band, like a lot of times bands just kind of put out EPs and do shows and stuff, but they just, played pizza places and did these little tiny regional tours for a long time, played to lots of, the sound guy and 7 people shows, and just really put in the work. And like, the other aspect about this, coming to it and reading about it, is that it just really, really makes me like really painfully nostalgic.
Yeah.
For being in a band and having a tiny, tiny, tiny taster slice of that life, and just this kind of scene and stuff. So that's part of the reason why we're not talking about, this first episode is not record one. It's about us, about why we're doing the show, and about how the band kind of started.
Yeah.
Because that stuff's important. Like, it's actually, to know why this stuff, again, this kind of seems like stolid kind of dad rock. The reason why it's, it's vital, it's kind of important to recognize the beginnings of as this kind of college dance band that they were.
Yeah. So there's a little bit more intro matter we should do. One, explain the name for anybody who might not know.
Oh yeah. So this was the alternate title for Reckoning, that they were going to call it, and it says this on the record sleeve as well. One thing I like that R.E.M. does is that they don't, they do these weird little things with their material, their record sleeves and stuff like that. Like they don't have A sides and B sides. They don't do that. They name their sides after different things because you can play the records usually, and you'll hear this if you listen to them on CD, is they usually have like two, opening track in the middle of the record as well.
Yeah.
It feels like it's because you can play them in either order.
Right.
And that album, a lot of the songs, were about water, and they wrote that on there. And I thought that was a good name for a thing.
Yeah. And we decided not to go with File Under Fire because every show on the network cannot have fire in the title.
It's true. And also Reckoning is a much better album than Document.
Oh, of course.
And then Talk About the Passion was the working title for this for a long time. And that, to me, like, it seems it's a little obvious, and it also makes it sound religious to me.
Yeah.
It's a little on the nose. So we decided not to go on that.
Yeah. And the joke title I never proposed, Fables of the Deconstruction.
Fables of the Deconstruction's actually, like, I think that's pretty funny. I don't know if I would have went for it, but I think that's pretty good.
Yeah. It just I don't know. I don't like the word deconstruction, but that is what I had.
It's a little pretentious, but it's also funny. So it's
and also we should talk about our sources too, because we're kind of pulling from different biographies of the band. There are a lot of them. I am pulling from a book that has kind of been revised over the years a lot by Tony Fletcher, originally called Remarks, and then it turned into Remarks Remembered, and now there's a print version called Perfect Circle that goes from the very, very beginning of the band all the way up to the end. If you get it on Amazon, you want to get the Perfect Circle version, because that is the complete one. The Kindle one only goes up, I think, through Reveal. So that is a pro tip. I thought there were two different books at the start. What are you pulling from, Gary?
So I read, I got two different books. They are older, so I need to actually brush up my reading when we get to the later albums. But I'm pulling from Talk About the Passion, R.E.M. and Oral History by Denise Sullivan. And then Inside Out, the story behind every song, which is literally, I really wanted to find something that was just a song by song kind of guide. It's funny because it just kind of pulls from interviews where people have talked about the songs, and it varies greatly in the usefulness of it.
Yeah.
The Oral History one, the Denise Sullivan book, is really, really good.
Yeah.
Again, for getting that feeling of like the scene, around these times.
Yeah.
And the stories behind the song one is good as well. It's just there's something that I noticed in it is Peter Buck gives a lot of interviews where he brags about how little time it takes to complete a song.
Yeah.
In a way that sounds like he's dismissing it before the interviewer can.
Yeah.
So we recorded in like an hour. Like he does it comes up like 20 times.
Yeah.
We just got in there. We like wrote and recorded in like 15 minutes.
Whatever.
Yeah. I don't even care.
I thought of the lyrics on the way to the studio. Yeah.
It is 100%. It's like, like Michael just kind of wrote something down on the back of a pizza box. We just kind of kicked it out. I don't care. Like he's constantly doing that, and I don't really get it. I don't really understand what it is, but it keeps coming up to a magazine called Bucket Full of Brains, which is not a thing anymore. But there's a lot of material pulled from like a song by song. But I remember when I first got Dead Letter Office, it has notes from Peter Buck on each song.
Yeah.
And I remember wanting like an entire kind of book of that. So that was part of my desire to get something like this.
Yeah. A lot of the kind of narrative about R.E.M. is through Peter Buck, because he is the only person who really talks. Michael Stipe famously kind of mysterious, like he built that up very early on. Mike Mills is more of kind of like a behind the scenes, like, just focused on the craft guy. And Bill Berry is, again, on that farm. So Peter Buck very early on kind of became the press emissary. So a lot of what we're going to get, kind of comes through him.
he's the one who, like, out of all of them, I think he's the one that was kind of into being a rock star.
Yeah, yeah.
And that's it's at times charming, at times frustrating, but like it does mean that he's real open and willing to talk about this stuff.
Yeah. And also from the mid 90s to the mid 2000s, I think that he just came with the studio for anybody who booked time to record an indie band.
That's true. Yeah,
he just like showed up and like, oh, our Peter Buck is over here in the corner. Use him if you want.
That's him in the corner. That's the jeez. He's also the one who, after the breakup of the band, is the most active. Like Mike Mills and Michael Stipe have been kind of dipping their toes in some things. Mm-hmm. Bill Berry has done a couple small reunion things that they've done mostly for charity and stuff. Again, very politically minded. But Peter Buck has kind of like, he's released solo albums. He's done some stuff.
Yeah.
Since then, I haven't listened to any of those. I have no idea if they're any good. I think they only came out on vinyl, but I'm sure they're up on YouTube. So we're doing that. We also are using YouTube a lot because there are a lot of old concerts, documentaries, R.E.M. interviews on MTV, things like that are available. And this show, instead of having show notes, is going to have a suggested listening section on the webpage. So if you're listening to this only through your podcatching device, if you actually go to fileunderwater.net, you can check on the entry for each show and see a playlist of the album, and then some talk of B-sides, outtakes, concerts, and stuff that we also talked about in the show.
Yeah, YouTube. I cannot imagine doing this show without as complete of a record as YouTube provides.
It would be the like VHSs. Like I used to have all the concert films and video compilations that they put out, and it would just be bonkers. Like I would be mailing you a VHS back and forth. Like it would not be it would not work.
Yeah.
So YouTube is hugely useful for this, especially since we are going kind of year by year, and we want to talk about the stuff that was left off of albums as well as what ended up on there, because some of that stuff's kind of important. Again, looking at the scene, not just the document that they put out. So if there's a song that they didn't put on the record but played live every night on tour for 2 years, like it's still worth talking about.
For sure. Also, kind of just Gary, you and I have talked about this. I don't know how it's going to shake out in the final edit. I don't even know who's doing the final edit, but we're not going to be including like examples of everything we talk about. Like it's going to be kind of very scant. This is a companion. If you're going to go out and like, find this stuff, it is not going to be like a very kind of exhaustively edited together. Like, and now here's 4 bars from Boxcars.
Yeah. Yeah. And part of that is because you guys can find that stuff. Again, we're going to have that suggested listening. Part of it is to make this sustainable.
Yeah.
And part of it is to make this, again, that kind of, like you said, like a companion piece to the music, which has never been more readily available. Like, I would never have thought when I was younger that YouTube would end up being like the most important resource for music for me.
Yep.
But it is 100% the ability to pull up any song I ever want to listen to instantly is a real blessing.
Yeah.
So we, they're not saying there will be no music included ever. But for the most part, it's going to just be us talking.
Yeah.
And you can check out those YouTubes.
Please do. So we should probably talk about the individual members of the band.
We at least as guys, and then kind of where they came from.
Yes. Yeah. So we've talked a little bit about Peter Buck so far. He is kind of the central personality around this. And I put an emphasis on personality. Go ahead.
Let's back up just a little bit, because there are probably people. Some people have said, like, I'm looking forward to the show. I don't really know anything about the band. So Peter Buck plays guitar.
Yes.
I don't think we mentioned that. It's a real basic thing. He's the guitar player of the band, and we will talk about him a little bit and kind of his signature sound now. But we should let everyone know who does what, because they might not know.
True. And also, like, we're not going to say, like, it's not really readily available too much who wrote what songs. Like, this is not a... good. It's
part of that thing with them being kind of, the good band, like the humble band, where every band member is credited as songwriter for every song.
Yes.
Because when you start reading these books and stuff I've read, like how collaborative it was is really, really cool to hear.
Yeah.
Because it's not lip service. It's not like Michael Stipe doing everybody a favor by, letting them. So there are a couple of exceptions. Like every once in a while we get some bummers from the drummer, but for the most part, like it is, everyone just kind of worked together on everything.
Yeah. Like this is a band that like very pointedly rules by consensus and closes rank. Like they, there's very little in the biographical information until you get like midway through the IRS years about any kind of conflict between them.
Yeah. Okay, sorry to cut you off.
No, that's perfectly fine. That is a good point of order. It is easy to start taking this stuff kind of for granted. So Peter Buck, born 1956 in Los Angeles, and then kind of eventually all these people made their way to Athens, Georgia, either through family or through kind of choice,
school, or to go to school.
Yeah. And his kind of arrival on that scene was just kind of organizing music events and also working at a record store. So like he was kind of at the hub of this place, making a lot of friends with people who were kind of part of this scene.
Yeah. And just kind of a part of the scene. Like people would go into this record store, obviously, and this is how he ended up meeting people in the band for the most part. He's got a very distinctive, one of the signature elements of the R.E.M. sound is Peter Buck, other than obviously Michael Stipe and then the secret weapon Mike Mills.
Yep.
But Peter Buck, real jangly, real lot of open chords, a lot of like arpeggios. It doesn't often take the lead in songs. It provides kind of a texture to what's going on. And he's kind of famous for that.
Yeah. The effect is that he's almost kind of constantly soloing a little bit, but it never rises to that. Like he never jumps to the front of any given mix, even though he might be the loudest thing in that. It is mostly just kind of like to lay down, almost like a background. Like this is a band that has gotten by with no lead guitar. Like it is just rhythm.
Kind of reflecting how the band is as personalities.
Yeah.
This idea that like no, there's not a lead instrument. Like every once in a while, there'll be a song where it's like, oh, this is dominated by this. But for the most part, it all kind of comes together to a greater whole, which is like such a respectable thing as somebody who has done music before. Like trying to write a song or work with people in a band where their end goal is their part, not what the thing sounds like, makes you want to pull your hair out. Like it is, it's a real quick digression. Like I know we're, but when one of the guy who I was in a band with, I won't name him, played drums in this band, and it was very frustrating. And we did our Halloween cover set. We covered Brian Eno like rock songs, and we did Here Come the Worm Jets. And Here Come the Worm Jets doesn't have percussion for most of the song. Like when it comes in, and he would not play during the beginning of it.
Oh no. And
I wanted to fucking wring his neck. Like just no, you can't do that. Like it literally begins with just that, one synthesizer line or like really, really fuzzy guitar with the synthesizer under it. And like, it's just that for a long time, and it builds like we're getting to you, and just, and the reason why it was so frustrating is because it was just, I'm bored. I don't care about the end result, and nobody in this band does that.
Right.
So
yeah. Because I'm not a great guitar player, but I'm a bit of a guitar nerd. Peter Buck got to start playing on a Telecaster, so like that probably informed a lot of his tone decisions. That was stolen, because basically all these people were living on couches for a good deal of the late 70s and early 80s. His distinctive touring guitar is a Rickenbacker, again, kind of this icon of jangle pop, almost this kind of semi hollow body Rickenbacker kind of thing. Again, picking up from the Beatles. The Beatles played a lot of Rickenbackers, but even though he played that a lot on tour, he mostly in the studio uses a Les Paul. So like pretty much after these first couple of years, he's using a Gibson Les Paul whenever you hear like something that is not an acoustic. So
yeah, he also becomes kind of known for using other stringed instruments a little bit later. So he's the guy who brought mandolin to rock pop music. Yep. Michael Stipe, the lead singer of the band, who very, very rarely will play other instruments for, I would say 98% of the songs, just the singer. Born in Decatur, 1960. Was kind of an army brat, moved around a lot as a kid, and kind of just got into music, kind of got into the idea of music from Patti Smith's Horses, television, the band Wire. The common denominator between those bands is that none of them are technically proficient singers.
Right.
He's talked before about like, oh, you can just get up there and belt it out. And that became really informative to kind of how he sings.
Yeah.
And he is a real, rides that kind of, art fuck line between being very shy and also being eccentric, so like wanting to be a little bit paid attention to, but also not wanting to be looked at. you know?
Yeah, like when they would record albums, he would be over in the corner or in a stairwell while everybody was doing it. But,
especially early on,
yeah. But during live shows, he was very much front and center, to the point where it was a curiosity for anybody who knew him outside of the band. This incredibly shy guy, again, doing that normal kind of artist thing where they change context and then immediately turn into a different person, dancing around, like Mick Jagger.
Or even, I mean, just like crazier and less sexier, sexy than that, just kind of like flailing.
Like, the line goes like Michael Stipe and then Tom York.
Exactly. And he went to Athens for school after, again, he moved around with his family, but he went to Athens school to do visual art, but was kind of shitty at it.
He was good at convincing his teachers that he wasn't shitty at it. He says.
There's that kind of art school cliche as well. He's also notably the last person to drop out to make a full band.
Right.
He kind of held on to the dream of a more traditional kind of college and kind of an art job life, longer than anyone else.
Yeah.
Michael Stipe, the other kind of real defining thing that really jumps out at you is his singing style, which again, like you're talking about, just kind of belts it out. It's also very often very indistinct. And that is a real cliche of this band, that you can't understand what Michael Stipe is saying.
Right. And he often writes a lot of the lyrics for this, but the lyrics are pretty much, they lead with the sound first more than anything. He'll get in love with the way a certain phrase sounds, and he'll get up there and kind of like murmur it out. No pun intended there. Even though he's singing very loud, like there's an awful lot of kind of just insistence from early producers of the band that there's no real treatment done. Like that is just how he sounds, even when he's singing loud, and not actually enunciating anything. And people would come up and say, "Oh, I really love when you say X, Y, Z," and he says, "Well, that's actually better than what I was singing. So yeah, let's go for it." Like everything about his presentation, from the actual text of what he's putting out to the way he presents it and the way he sings it, is impressionistic.
It's and a lot of times, and I love this, reading this, I knew this from before. Like I read an R.E.M. biography when I was young, when I was in my initial like mania. But reading about it and just kind of reminding me that like a lot of times there isn't anything there. The fact that like the people, myself included, would kind of pour over these things and try to transcribe these lyrics and stuff. And they're literally just sounds, like there's not a thing there. And that has become so specifically musically to like what I like to do music wise, really influential to what I appreciate and like to make. In that the kind of emotional truth or a turn of phrase or something like that is significantly more important than a literal meaning. And this is really like doing this show or researching for the show and stuff has really unlocked like, oh, like going forward, that's something that I like in all my lyrics that I listen to. This is the beginning of that. Like I am much more interested in kind of conveying a feeling than an actual story or a cognizant sentence.
And it's very much a deliberate choice. Like they say, what we're trying to accomplish is telling a story without telling a story. Like just let's strip away all narrative. Let's strip away all perspective. Even like there's no first or second person perspective in this, and just present the emotional core of this thing. Yeah.
And sometimes even just the words, like the sound of the word. Just because that has an inherent beauty to it. That it doesn't need the context of the surrounding words to lean on.
Right.
And that's just something I really, really respect. And being keyed into that, just kind of being able to have an instinctual way to drill down to that is something that he does as well as anyone.
Yeah.
I think. And one of the things that I noticed, again, in the kind of listening for the show that I think is really impressive is when he contrasts that with things that are very direct. So you'll get these R.E.M. songs that are just full of these things that feel like, metaphors from that are directly translated from another language or something. Like they feel they have like kind of the cadence of a metaphor, but there's nothing direct for them. And then he'll just pop out and be like, I'm sorry, or just pop out and put this very like plaintive, plain love song generic lyric to something. And the contrast, like he's really good at mixing and matching those things. And I really, really love the way that he kind of constructs that stuff.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Pretty great. Yeah, when I was initially getting into the band, Michael Stipe was kind of my intro. His his distinct vocal sound, like just it wasn't like anything I'd heard in a lot of other stuff, especially, you know, on the radio or on MTV, and just kind of, again, that lyrical fascination, looking for something that might not have been there, but still being very happy with what I found.
Yeah.
You know, like, go ahead.
It's the Dark Souls of vocalists. Like you get to bring in your you get to bring in your own but I mean it's kind of true. Like he hits that, it's like that 70% line, you know, where like I'm going to be able to fill in the rest of this to kind of create my own meaning. But there's something there.
Yeah.
Like he's, you know, so there's a little bit of that, like bringing yourself to it. I also, and I really, really love the fact that he is not as technically proficient as like, you know, somebody who is like classically trained too. You know, there's junk in there. Like there's some kind of bad notes or some kind of like stretches and stuff like that.
Yeah, or just phrases like intonations that just very slowly over the course of a phrase go off key, stuff like that.
Yes,
very kind of like strident consonants and things like that.
Put that in my veins. Like that is literally what I want from a singer.
Yep.
So like, you know, in a weird way, he is the like lyricist and vocalist for me. Like as far as my taste go.
Yeah. Mike Mills. The aforementioned secret weapon for the band. He's the bassist, and he kind of early on was an ally of Bill Berry. There's fun biographical information there, but he was born in Orange County and then ended up moving to Macon, Georgia as a baby. So he's effectively kind of a local to the South. And pretty much he's always been the goody two shoes. Like if this was a boy band, he would be like the button down repressed one.
Yeah. Yeah. He's a real dork. Yeah. I feel like he's consistently the dorkiest looking one, which I really, really appreciate. You know, aviators and stuff. He's also, I think, probably the most musically talented member of the band.
Without question.
Yeah. So he plays bass and keyboard. And you know, a lot of that stuff is more sophisticated than some of the other things that are going on.
Yeah.
Compositionally. And singing wise, like his voice is actually technically very good.
Yeah. But
kind of angelic.
Exactly. Like he's got this awesome tenor, and he comes from a family of vocalists. So you can kind of see, like, he comes by it honest, you know, but he's pretty much always not in the background, but kind of acting as counterpoint. Oftentimes like singing a completely different melody in the background and in a different corner or sometimes in a different room than Michael Stipe is.
Yeah. And, you know, occasionally gets to take the lead. A lot of songs though will be kind of call and response, or they kind of split the difference. Yeah. And you know, those kind of counter melodies and those kind of like really soaring, almost like at some points like kind of sounds Beach Boysy. The Beach Boysy?
Yeah.
Beach Boysy, Idaho?
Yeah, the Boise Beach.
Yeah, Boise Beach. It's that's like the really shitty Jimmy Buffett like bar.
Oh God.
In there. Like but like a lot of that stuff will kind of be some of the most affecting stuff that happens in a song, or at least the most melodically strong.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, he's really, really fantastic.
I came to appreciate Mike Mills very, very late. Like in my initial travails with the band, I mostly just liked his hair a lot. like post Monster era Mike Mills, like I really liked the steez that he was repping.
Perm.
I don't know, it just it worked for me. But no, his but just like listening to the bass, and this is something just in general, I never really paid a lot of attention to bass until kind of later in my music appreciation or whatever. That's a super shitty weird thing to say, but there we go. But his bass lines are so melodic. Like it is, he's kind of taking a page from almost like the Who a little bit in terms of in terms of what he kind of brings to it, and you just have to grab onto it and hold on. Like it is the technically proficient underpinning of a lot of these songs, especially the more rocking ones, that you know, kind of is modest and hides a little bit, but is right there.
Yeah. It's what's going to kind of drive us forward.
Yeah.
As we go. Bill Berry also sings a lot of those times. So a lot of those harmonies in the background are Bill Berry, which I didn't really realize until literally researching for the show that he sang a lot, and watching live footage, because he's kind of in the back. Drummers who sing along, you know, it's kind of rarer than you know otherwise than guitarists or whatever. And just notice that that's actually his voice in there as well. So he's born in Duluth, Minnesota in 1958. Moved kind of around the Great Lakes area before his family settled in Macon to avoid the recession.
Yeah,
and that is where
the Rust Belt rot up there.
Yeah. And that's where he met Mike Mills in high school.
Yeah.
They played in a lot of bands together as kind of this like power rhythm section.
Yeah.
Which is very cute. Best eyebrows in rock and roll.
Oh yeah.
And went on in a lot of kind of scene bands around Athens at this time. He drummed for and played for. So Love Tractor specifically around the same time R.E.M. was getting off the ground.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that Bill Berry is underrated as a drummer. A lot of time, like just his completely solid kind of presentation of the stuff, and just like he's not fancy, like he's not out there again, no solos. That is the rule in R.E.M. no solos. But you listen to this, and it is very much like a very technically proficient thing.
Yeah. And as far as I think that out of all the members of the band, he is definitely the one who, I don't want to say he brings the least because it's such like a skeleton, to the songs, but he is definitely the one who I've noticed the least as I go through. He's also the one, and this is, kind of unfair and it's looking forward, but like when there is kind of a snoozer song, a lot of times Bill Berry was really involved in the writing of it, which I'm finding through stuff like songs I kind of like a little bit less tend to be from Bill Berry, which is fine. They ended up doing very well, and other people love those songs. So that's just me.
Yeah.
But he's the one. He also ended up leaving the band. We'll talk about that in a long time from now. But he left the band. The band continued as a trio. For a while after that.
Yep. And so this is a 4-piece band. Everybody kind of served their own role, and they were together for about 15 years. Before Bill Berry left and kind of changed the makeup of it for good, really. Yeah.
And they kind of didn't recover from that. Like they ended on a note that is, defiant and respectable as a thing, but that really did kind of, that perfect alchemy that they had did kind of eventually crumble a little bit, and you can hear it, and we'll talk about it. I'm looking forward to kind of talking about that with the full context of the show up to that point behind us. So let's talk about the formation of the band.
Yeah. So the band kind of got together 2 and 2. So Peter Buck and Michael Stipe, they played music together kind of at the record store. Like it'd be after hours, and they'd split a 6-pack.
By playing music, we mean listening to music.
Yes.
At that point.
And play along and sing along, like that kind of stuff.
Yeah. That kind of thing. Because eventually they did start kind of writing songs together, but that was kind of, they moved in together. Like Peter Buck noticed Michael Stipe because Michael Stipe would come in and like buy the weird records.
Yeah.
And he appreciated that. And they decided to get a place together, which is just one of the many things that makes me so jealous of this like weird scene where let's go live anywhere. And
let's just go live in this abandoned Southern Gothic church house.
Like the pictures of that is crazy.
Yeah.
Like that church, and it's like so run down and cool looking, but they lived in this church. Then like as we mentioned, Mike Mills and Bill Berry who were already friends and kind of an established duo.
Yeah, like they kind of traveled around as like just this portable rhythm section that kind of plugged into different acts. One of my favorite details, Mike and Bill hated each other. Like Bill was a party kid, Mike was, straight A student kind of person, and they started working together by accident. Like they got to like there was this Southern boogie night at a local function or whatever, a very quaint kind of thing, and Bill shows up to play drums, and boom, here's this person that he hates. But they worked together.
Like they worked together kind of after that, ended up kind of, having this musical chemistry.
Yeah. Like they were best friends, decided to live together, and were kind of brought together with Peter and Michael, later on by Kathleen O'Brien, kind of one of these scene stirs around the Athens scene. We need to talk about the Athens scene a little bit for this, because it is weird. And I initially had a lot of affection for it, but that cooled off as I got more information about the way they treated R.E.M.
It was weird. Like they didn't, but there's so the psychology behind that feels so transparent. Like it's so like, oh, you guys got famous, fuck you guys.
Yeah.
Is what it feels like. It's still like as a seed bed for art. It feels like vital and awesome.
Yeah.
To me, because so it was, college town, lots of places to play. Lots of B-52s had made it like real big kind of at this point. They were kind of the first, and there's some other bands around. We mentioned Love Tractor, which Bill Berry played with, and Pylon, and they were all dance bands. Like Pylon is like a drum and bass led kind of like shouty, yelpy dance band.
Mm-hmm.
And Love Tractor is mostly instrumental kind of Southern dance band.
Yeah.
And that was the thing. Like you would get together, you would play in this club, cover to get in the club was $1 and beers were 90 cents. And you would go in and just get drunk and dance. Mm-hmm. And I imagine it's not in the books, but I just imagine people fucking like it's just like I feel like every single person's oral history and every single person's thing are just talking around the fact that just like everyone is having the best fucking sex in this like town.
Yeah.
It just feels like a recipe for that, man. I don't know.
Straight up Southern boogie, Jacob's Ladder, stand up devil fucking.
Yeah. just tons and tons of, bathroom cunnilingus. Like it's just like it just you can read it between the lines,
Yeah.
Go get drunk on cheap beer and just dance and sweat and like, but it just sounds kind of fucking rad. Like that cheap apartment scene, like when in my band days in like my hometown, we were doing that. There were like, oh, this person, there's like a tiny little taste of this, oh, these people live above this record store in this weird kind of apartment. Have you been there? Blah, blah, blah. They do living room shows every once in a while.
Yeah.
Like it just reminded me so much of that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And Peter and Mike kind of became the center of this because how just like there is just a party house. It doesn't matter who lives there. Like it just comes with built-in party.
Yeah. Yeah. It was the Purple House was one of the ones in my hometown was called the Purple House.
Yeah.
For some reason, it was very imaginative, but yeah, that was like one of the party houses.
Yeah. We lived next to the party house in my neighborhood, off of the campus of University of Cincinnati. It was the party house because it had like a 20 by 30 foot front deck.
Ooh, yeah.
Attached to the front of it, which that is regulation size for beer pong, and it was intolerable living next to that.
Yeah.
Yeah. It wasn't like good party. It wasn't this kind of party.
Yeah, that's a bad kind of party.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's like a frat house
kind
of party.
Yeah.
It sounds like
bad parties. Yeah. But like Pylon, I'm not that crazy on. Love Tractor I can get down with, actually.
I have the Pylon Greatest Hits CD. And they have some songs that are kind of good. I learned about them because R.E.M. covered one of their first big hits, Crazy, which we'll talk about it when that comes up, end up on their B-sides compilation. And I was kind of into it. They're still active. I found like some live footage of them that's more recent.
Oh, wow.
That's kind of cool to watch. And I think that one of the reasons why R.E.M. made it and some of these other bands didn't is because they translated to album good.
Yeah.
So when like watching Pylon, I was like, you know what? If I was drunk in a basement and this was going on, I would fucking lose my mind and like dance and be really into it at that age.
Yeah.
But later in the cold light of morning, when I'm like sitting down drinking coffee and want to listen to an album, I don't want to listen to it at all.
Right.
And like get you a man that can do both is the R.E.M. motto with this.
Yeah.
Love Tractor, I don't know anything other than a couple songs I found on YouTube.
Yeah.
But I think they're pretty cool too. They really lean into the Southern thing.
I'm down with it. It's fine.
Yeah. I am too. Like I like it too. There's some other bands that were kind of big around this time that were part of the scene, but the important thing is kind of establishing house parties and small club shows where it was dirt cheap to get in.
Yeah.
And just get drunk, dance.
Yeah.
And again, parenthetical screw.
Yep. Implicit between the lines screwing.
Yes.
This is also, so as a Southern college art town, kind of, they had this new wave insurgency that happens, in the shockwaves that would lead up to the second British invasion or whatever. And WUOG, the college station, had to be shut down for 3 whole months because the folk and jazz kind of NPR crowd were in just this constant conflict with the new wavers. Like they were fighting over this small little bit of like airspace. Like, and I've been, like college radio stations, there's not that much special about them. Yeah. So, I managed one. Like it's very difficult to imagine that being like a seedbed for that kind of conflict, but that was the time.
Yeah, it was a time of it's like I'm just imagining a helicopter shot and all along the watchtower playing as like you pan across Athens, Georgia, and just talking about this conflict because it was a time where we were on this kind of musically this kind of early college rock,
Mm-hmm.
reacting against disco,
Yeah.
and not leaning into the super cool synthesizers,
Yeah,
the
yeah.
kind of dirtier version of In Between This.
It's like punk landed, dissolved, mostly lived on the West Coast, but new wave took root because of the influence from New York.
Yeah.
And so that was the inroad that this kind of really weird stuff had.
And the something that I know Peter Buck has said in interviews and is kind of thing is that the band wouldn't be around. It would not have been the same if they had been in California or New York, because there's all eyes are on you, and you kind of go from 0 to 60.
Mm-hmm.
You're not allowed to kind of be a band that just kind of plays clubs and does this kind of party scene for as long as you need to kind of mature and kind of matriculate as songwriters. And that's part of it. So the scene, this environment was instrumental to the band being what it was.
Yeah.
100%.
Yeah. So we mentioned earlier, Kathleen O'Brien was, again, as somebody who was involved with WUOG and part of the scene and played with a band called the Woggers.
Yeah.
Again, people from WUOG who, was a friend with both Peter and Michael, and then Mike and Bill, and recognized that you guys would probably get along, and knew that they were playing and practicing, and then kind of pressured them to put on a show.
Yeah. Yeah. Like, you guys should be a band, kind of, Play the Matchmaker was Will Smith's Hitch to R.E.M. And there's this legendary church show in Peter and Michael's house. April 5th, 1980 is when the band was kind of born.
Yeah.
It was a birthday party for her. Like, that's how she got them to play this thing. She's like, hey, do it for me as a favor for my birthday. What a cute way for a band to start.
I know, right?
As a favor for their friend's birthday. And a couple hundred people showed up. Like, it ended up being a big deal, including several people who were from other clubs who did booking and stuff. And that's kind of what set this momentum.
Yeah. If you want to get a sense of what they sounded like at this point, it's so different than what they eventually committed.
Yeah. I found a Pitchfork article, and there's YouTube links that corresponding that's the earliest known live performance. That'll be in the recommended listening section for the show. It's bonkers.
Yeah.
Like, early R.E.M. is so weird and kinetic and fast.
Yeah.
It's before it's, get you a band that can do both. Like, it is, it is this the kind of thing where if I was drunk at a church, I would love dancing around to this, and eventually maybe later that night I would get to touch the tit. And then but it's pretty, I don't want to say unlistenable, but like, it's hard to appreciate.
Yeah, it's very fast, and when they're I put this in the notes here, but it was impossible for me not to listen to that and imagine a future where they leaned into that fast sloppiness with Michael Stipe's kind of clear and shouted vocals. Like, they were on the road to be the Dead Kennedys. Like, if they came up in New York, that's what they would be.
It's very like yelpy and percussive, the vocals.
Yeah.
And that doesn't eventually Michael Stipe would learn to use that.
Yeah.
In the middle of songs, but it doesn't lean into its strengths as a vocalist, which has to do with these kind of like insistent vowel sounds.
Yeah.
So there wasn't a lot of space for that vocally. It's also like a lot of covers. Everything, so they wrote for this show, they wrote like specifically like 10 original songs, 10 covers, and some of those originals would end up on albums later. So we'll talk about some of those like very early songs that actually made it. But 10 originals, 10 covers, all of which played at like blinding speed.
Yeah.
And listening to those old songs are really, really quick. They also, R.E.M. was not the name at this point. They had a bunch of working names. The most enduring and best of the working names was the Twisted Kites, and they did a couple shows under that name. Not great, but better than the alternatives.
The alternatives, namely Cans of Piss or Slut Bank.
Can you imagine if we were doing this show for Slut Bank? Like,
I think it would start with like a half-hour disclaimer.
Yeah, Slut Bank podcast.
No shame intended.
Yeah, heading down to the Slut Bank.
Like, make a withdrawal.
I'm gonna make a deposit. Yeah. I'm not gonna make a withdrawal, buddy.
Yeah, there is nothing good down that joke road.
No.
But they got the names just by kind of inviting people to write on the walls.
I read a couple different. So that's how they got those names. The actual name R.E.M. kind of apocryphally, I don't know how true it is, but Michael Stipe picked it randomly out of a dictionary.
Okay. Yeah.
Is what he says. But Michael Stipe also does that early Bob Dylan thing of lying.
Yep.
In interviews and stuff, where like he is the mystery art fuck. So sometimes he will, kind of just make up things that. So I don't know how true that is, but that's kind of the story.
Yeah. And the story that built up around it is, hey, R.E.M. is, the portion of sleep where you're dreaming or whatever, but also it's just 3 letters and you can make it mean what you want.
Yeah. Which is, again, kind of ties into their thematic holes.
Yeah.
So they kind of became the toast of the town, like became an in-demand thing in town specifically. Right. So they would go to different clubs, different club promoters with that church show invited them to play. They would play at these different venues and house parties and the like, and started kind of, slowly touring and around Georgia. And there was this kind of rivalry between Atlanta and Athens, where like people in Atlanta did not care for them, and people kind of regionally did not really care for them either. This is the time when they were doing a lot of that, like playing for 9 guys and the sound guy, kind of thing, a lot of the time. Yeah, little pizza places and shit.
but they would go and do that one night and then go and play in Atlanta for 4,000 people.
Yeah,
and then immediately go back to 9 guys and a sound guy.
Yeah,
kind of thing. And during this, like nobody in Athens really knew what to make of them because they were trying to cultivate. At least the sense that I got is that they were trying to cultivate this arty reputation, and here you have this party band doing covers. Yeah.
There was a lot of dismissive, so it's kind of weird. I mean, obviously, opinions were mixed, right?
Yeah.
So they were definitely popular there. Like people in Athens liked them a lot.
Yeah.
I think that there is. I mean, it really just seems, like I said, it seems like weird jealousy to me.
Yeah.
I know that's an easy dismissal to make when somebody criticizes something that's successful, but that's what it feels a lot.
Yeah.
And you like to see you do better, and also you're doing this very populist thing.
Yeah.
You're doing covers, you're doing really danceable music. It's not, it doesn't have a clear message, to it. Like I could see it just being a reaction against that.
Yeah.
Is what it kind of feels like.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So after they toured for a little bit, they decided, hey, we're going to want to make a tape. But the sense that I get is that the goal for making a tape wasn't to have something to sell. They pretty much just use them as demos.
They wanted to send them to clubs to get shows.
Yeah.
That was the entirety of kind of the point.
Yes.
So they kind of did these early tapes with Mitch Easter, who's going to be very important to the band, and Jefferson Holt are the two and Burtis Downs. I guess all 3 of them kind of show up.
Yeah.
Here, these 3 people we should talk about briefly without going into everything. Jefferson Holt as their manager. Kind of before this, Kathleen O'Brien was kind of their unofficial manager for a time.
Yeah.
But I believe so. And then Jefferson Holt took over as their kind of 5th member.
Yeah.
Mitch Easter had a garage studio called the Drive-In, which is very cool. It was like an indoor-outdoor kind of thing.
Yeah.
Which is super, super cool. Kind of heard them and courted them to record.
Yeah.
Record their early stuff, and he's kind of really responsible for a lot of their early sound. Which is it's really cool to hear that.
Like Mitch Easter, so he kind of joined them as this, he was the 5th of the the 5th member of them, kind of creatively, and kind of constantly all of these labels were trying to cut him out of it. Okay, you've had a lot of fun there in your little studio. Let's let the pros do it. But they pretty much always ended up going back to him because they in
these very early days.
Yeah,
because eventually they do record with other people.
Of course.
Mitch Easter, Jefferson Holt, and then Burtis Downs is their lawyer, who shows up a lot in these books, and it's really hard to see. Like I know what a lawyer does. Like I'm not an idiot, but it's just kind of weird how important he is to the band. Like it's just kind of weird he shows up as often as he does when like legal issues don't. Things that would seem like he would be germane to aren't really talked about. But he's kind of the other. They've got like 3 5th members. Eventually, Jefferson did some sexual harassment and got kind of kicked off their team. So that's kind of sad. But we're about 10 years out from that,
right.
12 years out from that.
Yeah, Burtis Downs was important for kind of negotiating, like getting them out of the Hibtone disaster.
That's true.
Yeah, and like that, like it helps them get on IRS in good footing.
Well, the Hibtone and then the what is it, the Dash Topes.
Oh
thing?
Yeah.
So let's talk about that. So first, they make this demo tape with Jefferson Holt.
Yes.
That has 3 songs on it: "Sitting Still," "Radio for Europe," and "White Tornado."
Yeah.
And these, I actually kind of dig these mixes of these. These are early versions of these songs that are not super well known. This again was that tape that was not really meant to be commercial, like people to get their hands on it, but it was meant for demos.
Right.
And White Tornado is one of their earliest songs as well, as an instrumental kind of surf rock song.
Yeah, incredibly surfy. Yeah.
There's another early version of Radio for Europe that is more well known that we'll talk about here in a second.
Yeah, this is the version that would end up on Eponymous, kind of the first collection. Like Radio for Europe is a song that they did a lot of versions of, and I think that each of the mixes has something to like something to their credit. This one is incredibly trebly, which again is kind of this foundational thing about the band, is that they lean on that treble in a huge way.
This one isn't the Dead Letter Office one or the Eponymous one. The Hibtone one is.
Oh shit! I'm sorry. Yeah,
that's okay. It is confusing because there's lots of stuff there. Yeah. There's some other kind of big songs that they played a lot around here that are kind of important in their cosmology without being committed to tape.
Yeah.
So we want to make sure we cover some of that stuff because I'm interested in outtakes and things. So there's a song called Narrator.
Yes.
I hear. Which is like, God, what is this nonsense? It's like a rockabilly Elvis, like, oh, 76.
Yeah, like we wouldn't hear this again until like that one joke line in Man in the Moon.
Yeah.
Like, like during that post-chorus bridge or pre-chorus bridge.
Ridiculous.
Yeah.
Like,
it's incredibly motor mouthed. Like this is, I appreciate Michael Stipe. Like, he had to refine that. Like he had to refine his whole steez as he got up to, becoming himself. This does not work. It is incredibly awkward. I
think this is not a really good song. Some other songs that came up later were, end up being so like Just a Touch is a song that's written around here. You can find live stuff of that song, which is kind of weird. That song later get dusted off for Life Search Pageant. There's a song. Do you know? I forgot to put this in the email and stuff. Do you know All the Right Friends?
Yes. Yeah. That was that like All the Right Friends was. It's really good. But like it is. Like Michael Stipe had this period where he was writing a lot of kind of stereotypically misogynistic songs a little bit. Like the original title for All the Right Friends is like, "Oh, I don't want you anymore" or something like that.
Yeah.
Well,
there's lots of. Whenever I see that kind of stuff, it's hard for me to think of as misogynist. I think
it was the only word that I could find. Like it was really juvenile a little bit.
Trying on traditional love song. Yeah. Like songs from spurned lovers, kind of trying on traditional song kind of structure things.
Yeah.
But that's a song that eventually got recorded a lot. I think for like the Vanilla Sky soundtrack in the 90s, but was like a live staple and is actually like would have been worth saving. Like it's kind of a good song.
Yeah.
Did you run across in like the bootleg stuff? Did you run across Body Count?
No, I did not.
Body Count's really embarrassing. It's a really bad song. It's got like military drumming. It's about Vietnam.
I read about that one. Yeah.
It's him trying on this like kind of woke persona that he would get later, but just doing it in the most college, like immature, shitty way possible. Like, that's not a great one.
What is it? Don't Move to Brockway, I think.
Oh, sure.
Yeah, that was a Michael Mills joint. Like he wrote that as like a plaintive plea to, somebody he really liked, this woman who was getting ready to move out of town. I like that one a lot. Like that is another early staple for them.
Yeah. So they're doing these things, but they just recorded these 3 songs on the tape. And then they run into this Johnny Hibbert guy, who moved into town, wanted to make his own label called Hibtone, and like approached them about doing like, hey, I want to record a single with you guys. Like if you give me the deal was I'll put it out and everything in exchange for like the rights.
Yeah.
I will produce it and stuff. And then they did a mix of it. That's the Hibtone mix that everyone hates in the band.
Yeah.
And it's, they were like, oh, there's all this argument. Like, is the mix bad? Is the master bad? Is it the pressing that's bad? But it does sound really weird. It's a really weird mix of the song.
Yeah.
It was still wildly successful.
Yeah.
Like they sold tons of copies because it's Radio for Europe and it's amazing.
Yeah. It's a really good song. Like it was the thing that they kind of stumbled on as being incredibly commercially viable.
Yeah.
While still being like patently R.E.M.
So when it came time to actually record their EP, and record, they ended up having to eventually get away from Hibbert.
Yeah.
Hibbert had this stuff. And it was contentious. They ended up eventually just kind of buying him out because Hibbert was hard up on cash because the Hibtones didn't make it. It's something about some guy with like Hib in his name. I'm going to cause I'm gonna make the Garetones. That's my label. There's something kind of quaint and dorky about that is like almost charming, but also annoying.
Yep. The logo for Hiptone is pretty funny too.
Yeah.
Yeah, but it was Downs who got them out of that deal. Like you said, hey, you guys can't do this, and the negotiation was really kind of cutthroat that they did. They're like, okay, well, we'll just write new songs. You're never going to see a dime out of this, because we're just never going to publish it. Like, screw you can have it, but you're not going to get anything out of it. And eventually, they got the publishing rights to Sitting Still and Radio for Europe by giving him like $2,000 and sending him on his way.
And that was, they did that before Murmur.
Yeah.
So they had to do that because those songs do end up on Murmur. Mm-hmm. So this demo, as we talked about, it'll be in the show notes. It's worth listening to. It's really cool. Yeah. It was mostly used to gain shows. Yeah. And that's kind of the genesis of the band. That's about where we're going to call it for this episode, before we actually talk about their first EP next episode.
Yes. So I'm very excited to kind of go through these songs, like again, diving in head first and just kind of living listening to this music kind of just 24/7 or whenever I've been listening to stuff. It's great, and I really like talking about music with you, Gary.
Yeah,
and
it's very fun.
Yeah, I'm just incredibly excited that we're able to do this. It is a real privilege that we can just like make a decision to start this up, and people are like, yeah, we'll support that.
Yeah. I hope people like it. When a show starts out, as we always say, it's very important to get some momentum. So if you do like this, rate and review it, share it with people, let people know that you like it. Mm-hmm. And someday we'll end up on that Podmas thing.
We'll get there. We'll get there
someday, kid. Jimmy. But let people know about the show.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's gonna end up being pretty good, without to be my most R.E.M. self possible and be humble about it. But I think that it at the very least will be fun to do.
Yeah.
And I like to think that we'll end up making something that's worth listening to out of this. I'm also like, even just like the research part of this, I'm psyched for.
Me too.
Just taking a look at learning that like there's like this song was written for Life's Such a Pageant. That's really interesting. Oh wow, this is so different. Like, just hearing these things I know so well being recontextualized and hearing like what could have made it has been really fascinating.
Yeah. And I would definitely encourage people go and check out the show notes for this. Usually those show notes on other shows, they are, kind of giving a little bit more information about references that we make, or, kind of just as, again, reference material if we're pulling from something about Dark Souls or whatever. Like, this is something that Gary's put a lot of work into, putting together like these examples of things like, I don't know if I could have found those. And Gary's work has been really important for kind of giving me the context outside of the books and stuff that we've pulled up.
Yeah, I'm doing some research for you if you're listening to this. So at least creating a series of links you can check out to kind of get an idea of R.E.M. or whatever in this year and what these also rans were. So I'm really excited. I'm so glad that stuff's available. The other thing you can do if you support the show, you've already done it, because it was a Patreon goal, but everyone, the show's free. It's not a Patreon exclusive. So if you're listening to this and you're not one of our patrons, if you go to patreon.com/Duckfeed.tv, you can choose to give us a couple bucks a month. Mm-hmm. If you do so, you get a bunch of cool stuff and you make more stuff like this happen. So this only happened because of that. And
we're part of a network, as we kind of mentioned at the beginning there, where we mostly talk about video games and video game related things. Go to Duckfeed.tv and check out the huge slate of shows. We're not getting away from video games, but we're broadening away from that. But we have just a lot of fun stuff, things that we're really proud of, and we hope that if this is your entry into us as people who talk about things, we hope you check those out as well.
Yeah, I feel like most of the things are probably most people listening it's probably the opposite.
True.
I imagine that they probably came for the video games and are now checking this out, dipping their toes in, and I hope that we can make it worth listening to. Mm-hmm. So it's the end of boy, I feel stupid saying it now.
Boy, yeah.
So that's the end of the show as we know it.
Yeah. And we feel fine, but we can't wait to come back next time in 2 weeks.
Umbasa.
Umbasa.